Hey YouTube, Joseph Vollmer here. Before we get too far into this video, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, please do so, and if you already have, make sure you hit the notification bell so you get notifications on all my upcoming videos. And as always, when it's all over with, please don't forget to rate the video. If you have any questions, put them in the comment section. I'd be more than happy to answer them. This was Tuesday of my trip to Orlando, and I didn't have much going on that day, so I decided to ride through the old neighborhood just north of Orlando where I used to live and kind of check it out. About the only thing that seemed like it hadn't changed was my apartment complex. Everything else is so grown up, it's unreal. So I headed on up to Daytona, and I was going to take the back roads and try and get you some good video, but it was so stinking hot and it was getting later in the afternoon that I kind of wanted to get there, so I hit the interstate. Right here on the right hand side of the screen is Daytona International Speedway, and here in just a minute, once I get past it, I mean, you can see how immense the facility there is. It's several blocks long. But I did pull in and got a picture of the bike sitting in front of the tunnel turn, which is turn 4. And unfortunately, the very nice security guard did not want to allow me down onto the infield to get a picture of the bike down there. And there were some, I presume some race teams down there practicing. I could hear the cars running on the track. But after this, I did head on into Daytona, and I figured I would bring you guys along with me and kind of let you see some of the sights through town, at least some of the more interesting stuff. And Daytona has changed a little bit since the last time I was there, which would have been back in 2002. But I didn't really stop and check too much out going through town because I didn't see anything new that seemed to really pique my interest. As you can see here, I'm pulling in, and the turn 4 tunnel is directly in front of me. You'll see it here in a second. But that actually leads down. That's how the race teams get down onto the infield. So, and this is further on, headed into Daytona. I'm not exactly sure what the structure on the right-hand side is here, but it's kind of a cool looking structure, so I figured I would include it in the video for you guys. I apologize, I've had to actually cut some of the sound out of the video clips, and the reason for that is a lot of times I will have my radio on the bike when I'm riding, and unfortunately, due to copyright stuff, I can't have that music in there. If the camera's picking it up, I have to edit the sound out. Otherwise, YouTube gets crabby with their copyright stuff. I'm actually coming up on US 1 right here, and I was actually headed toward the beach. As you can see here, I'm getting a little bit closer. Just in front of me is the bridge that crosses the intercoastal waterway that goes between the actual city of Daytona and I guess technically the city of Daytona Beach. So Daytona Beach is basically, for lack of a better term, on an island, which is most of the, beaches in Florida. So I just thought these were some pretty cool shots crossing over the causeway here. The street I'm coming up on now is actually Florida A1A, and A1A is the main north-south thoroughfare, especially along the east coast of Florida, that runs just in from the beaches. And once I cross A1A here in just a second, I will actually, the street that I'm on dead ends on the beach. So the neat thing about Daytona, which you'll see here in a minute, is you pay a day use fee and you can drive, or in my case ride, on the beach. The one thing that I did have to be very careful of was to dodge the puddles of salt water. I didn't really want to splash the salt water up on the bike, because if you thought road salt was bad on a car, seawater is even worse. But apparently they had just regraded the beaches to try and get rid of some rainwater and some high tide from the night before, and it wasn't helping. So, and when I got to the beach, they were actually, the attendant was telling me they were pretty close to high tide then, so I had to be a little bit creative getting around the giant puddles of salt water. But I sped this footage up 2 times, I think it was 2 or 3 times, because it was a nice ride down the beach, and I think it's some really neat video. But it was probably about 20 minutes worth of video, so I didn't want you guys to have to sit through 20 minutes of riding down the beach to see what was going to happen next. So hopefully you're enjoying it. For all the safety sallies out there, after I did stop and take a few pictures on the beach and make a phone call, I did finish the rest of my ride down the beach without a helmet on, considering the fact that I was only going between 5 and maybe 10 miles an hour max, and if I fell off I was going to land on some nice soft sand. I figured I'd probably be okay for that, but as you'll see right here, before I got back out on the street, I did pull off to the side, stick my helmet back on. And it was ridiculously hot. I think the heat index that day was somewhere in the neighborhood of 110, 115. So trying to do 5 to 10 miles an hour down the beach was absolutely... I wasn't jumping in the water, so it was miserable. At the beginning of the next clip, if you watch on my left hand side, the large building that I'm passing that I'm about to turn into used to be Daytona Harley-Davidson, and I rode up there to check it out because it had been several years since I've been there. Turns out it is now Daytona, India, and they lay claim to being the world's largest single line Indian dealer. They did have a lot of other used bikes, Victories, Goldwings, you name it, they had it used, but their new line is all Indian, and I was actually very shocked to find out that Daytona Harley-Davidson had actually moved farther up the coast, closer to I-95 and kind of out of central Daytona Beach, which is a little shocking. And here I'm headed out of town. It was really starting to look like rain, so I went ahead and put my vest and my wallet and everything else in my tour pack. That way, I didn't bother putting my rain gear on because it was so hot that day. I didn't really want to be, I'd ended up just as wet in the rain gear from sweating inside of it as I would have from getting rained on. So I figured I'd take my chances, and I had a pretty light t-shirt on anyway. But as luck would have it, before I made it out of Daytona, which you'll see here in a second, it did start raining. And then I got out of Daytona and quit. I dried out, got about halfway to Orlando, started raining again. Got soaked, it dried out, I dried out again, which unfortunately on this trip was about the MO for the trip. we got rained on at some point. Sometimes it was just enough of a sprinkle to cool us off, which was very nice. And other days it was the torrent. You're on as cold as you can. You're about to get soaked. You know, unfortunately, that's the way it goes sometimes. And as you'll see later on in some of the other videos from this trip, riding through some of those rainstorms made for some absolutely incredible views and rides later on. So sometimes you just have to deal with it. Right here I'm hopping up back on I-95 to head back into Orlando. There is one more clip after this, which we got stuck in a huge traffic jam in the rain, and turns out it was an accident on the other side. Some people decided to play bumper cars, and I clicked the camera on and figured I'd capture a little bit of it. And here you can see the accident. Somehow this unfortunate soul ended up going the wrong direction on the interstate. So everybody on my side, there were no incidents there, but it just slowed everybody down when they decided to stop and stare. And as you can see, it of course is raining, and you can tell in this shot, I think the rain for the most part had pretty well quit, but my shirt is absolutely soaked, and that is actual real speed, real time. So guys, I hope you've enjoyed the video. Please don't forget to rate it, and stay tuned for the next ones in this series as we leave Orlando and head up toward the Smoky Mountains.